going to get started. The topic of today, what every Muslim should know. No other religion or institution gives as much importance to knowledge as the religion of Islam. What are the core Islamic teachings that each Muslim is required to learn? As we read in the verses, what were the prophets sent to teach? That is, he sent them to be witnesses so that they can relay and purify them, relay the message, and convey the wisdom to people. It is He who has sent among them an unlettered messenger from amongst them, reciting to them His verses and purifying them and teaching them from the book and the wisdom. The world is going through quite a bit of upheaval when it comes to social change. Understanding social issues is a first step towards a change and a serious discussion about them. Those serious discussions among communities and government and even the workplace can lead to comprehensive understanding, contemporary solutions, and reform. While there are many social issues facing us today as Muslims, we must be able to address homosexuality, racism, misogyny, illegal immigration, and political participation. Our first speaker will be Dr. Hesham Abdulla. Dr. Hesham Abdulla is a researcher at Roche International with a PhD in clinical pharmacology. He recently moved to New Jersey, previously living in the Bay Area in California. We lost him in California, but I'm sure the New Jersey community has him as an asset, where he has a family of 7. Dr. Hesham has a degree in Sharia as well, and has taught several courses at the Islamic American University. His focus is on source methodology of fiqh and global objectives. He is a frequent guest speaker at mosques, universities, and conferences. Dr. Hesham is currently on the board of trustees for the Muslim American Society Mass. Without further ado, Dr. Hesham Abdulla.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
This thing doesn't seem to be working, but it's okay. Make it something. Wondering what I'm trying to do. I'm just. Some people ask to put things on live video. Is that allowed? Does the convention allow me to do so? Yes. Okay, I'll start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm messing things up here. Sorry. Yes. I don't want to be holding it and make this all loud. It will be just the sound, it's okay. Jazakumullah khair. Again, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. It seems like these days, whatever the topic is, whatever the title is, we end up talking about Trump. It happens. And this is no exception. However, we're trying to put things in context, inshallah. We're talking about what every Muslim should know about their own religion, about their own deen. And what I would like to focus is what we should know about our own deen from a social reform or societal responsibility point of view. And the question is, what does Islam have to do with social reform? The short answer is everything. Islam is about social reform in a very, very large degree. And not when I say Islam, I don't just mean the Islam that was sent or was given to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam but indeed from the time the Islam that was sent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Nuh alayhi salam and with all the messengers. If you examine the qasas or the stories of the prophets in the Quran carefully, you will find that all of them have a common message, which is A'budullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayru, at-tawheed, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not associate partners, do not prostrate yourself to idols or any form of false gods and whatever people choose to worship. That is the pillar number one of the risala, or the message of all the messengers and the prophets. And the second one is a social message. It's about social reform. For example, Sayyidina Shu'aib alayhi salam, he came with A'budullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayru, that's the pillar of Tawheed, and meaning worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and لا تنقصوا الكيل أو المكيال أو الميزان ولا تبخسوا الناس أشياءهم. He was dealing with two main issues. One is the cheating and the illegitimate dealing in money and in trade, and the attacking the caravans, the highway robbery that the people of Madian used to be involved in. So he wanted, or the message of Sayyidina Shu'aib alayhi salam was Tawheed and social reform. Sayyidina Hud alayhi salam before that, A'budullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh, Tawheed, and then he was warning them against being aggressive or transgress against their neighbors who were weaker than them. Sayyidina Salih, it's the same thing. It's A'budullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh, and do not be so involved in dunya and you're building these big houses in the mountains and you think that you're going to live forever. And of course, that is, that there was also, when you read that the story of Salih, there were people who were oppressed, the mustad'afin, there were people who were oppressed who followed Sayyidina Salih, and among those who followed Sayyidina Salih, and there was the alladhina istakbaru, or those who were oppressors. So this has always been the scene. Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam came with Tawheed and the social message of stopping the act of homosexuality in order to, obey the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in, building families the right way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has intended to be built. And so on and so forth. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the message was not different. The message was Tawheed, قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ تفلحوا. And actually, without even saying without hearing the other part of the message, a Bedouin, when he heard, and he asked, what is this man saying? Asking about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. He's calling to La ilaha illallah. And then he immediately says, هذا قول لا تحبه الملوك. The kings and the chiefs do not like to hear that, because they use religion in order to oppress people. So they have them worship the false idols and they submit to the priests and the chiefs of the tribes and so on, in order to oppress them, in order to exploit them. So, but of course the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ made it absolutely clear from very early in his da'wah that his message is about Tawheed and social reform. Sayyidina Ja'far Ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, when he was one of the people who migrated to Al-Habasha, to Abyssinia, Ethiopia, or that area, the Horn of Africa now. And when he stood in front of the Najashi, the king of Abyssinia, in order to defend the Muslims, stopping them from getting deported, if you will, because that was the desire of the people of Quraysh. They want to have them back. So Sayyidina Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, when he stood before the Najashi, he said exactly the same. He said, he first described the previous situation. كنا قوما يعني أهل جاهلية. We lived in ignorance. We used to worship idols. We used to, eat the dead animals, and we used to oppress the weak. We used to sever the tie of kinship. We used to, in his words, وَيَأْكُلُ الْقَوِيُّ مِنَّا الضَّعِيفِ. The strong among us will eat and swallow the weak. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us this honorable messenger whose family, whose ancestry we know very well. And he told us to, number one, to worship Allah with no partners, and number two, to join to Silatul Rahim, to be kind to our women, be kind to our family, to stop oppressing one another. Again, Tawheed and social responsibility, Tawheed and social reform. So when one of the great Muslims, the Sahabi radiallahu anhu, Rabi'i ibn Amir, when he stood up in front of Rustum, in front of the leader of the Persian army, and he asked him, why are you here? Rustum asked him, why are you guys doing there? We used to send you some handouts, and you used to leave us alone. Why are you here? So Sayyidina Rabi'i ibn Amir also made that same statement. He said, Inna Allah ta'athana, Allah has sent us, لِنُخْرِجَ الْعِبَادِ, to deliver His servants out of being enslaved by other people, مِنْ عِبَادَةِ الْعِبَادِ إِلَى عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ, to being only servants of Allah. And from the oppression and the tyranny of other ways of life, وَمِنْ جَوْرِ الْأَدْيَانِ إِلَى عَدْلِ الْإِسْلَامِ, to the justice of Islam. And from the narrowness of this life, مِنْ ضِيقِ الدُّنْيا إِلَى سِعَةِ الدُّنْيا وَالْآخِرَةِ, or to the vastness and the happiness in this life and in the hereafter. So do we now agree that all the messages from the time of, from the first messengers to the Prophet ﷺ had these two pillars, Tawheed and social reform? Do we agree to that?
No.
So if we fulfill one and we don't fulfill the other, what are we going to be, doing to ourselves? We will be standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He would be asking us, okay, so, we'd be asked, you have fulfilled, or you claim to fulfill Tawheed, because one actually feeds into the other, but you saw all this oppression, all this oppression, all these oppressed people, you saw all the injustice happening, at home and abroad, and you didn't do anything. Then what are we going to say? We don't have anything to say in that case. We have to be able to say, we tried. So we must stand for social justice. This is not a luxury. It is not good publicity. It is not PR. It is not just to build tactical alliances with other communities. No, we have to stand for social justice as part of our aqidah. I loved it when Imam Jihad last night was talking about practical theology. That's his field of study. Practical theology is that what does your theology, what does your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what's the practical implication? And here's one of the major practical implications of believing in Allah, which is work for social justice. So when we look, I'm not keeping track of time. Are you keeping track of time? Yeah. Good. At least one of us is. So inshallah you'll give me a warning, inshallah. Or I'll finish early, which rarely happens. So what does that mean for us as Muslims? It means that we have as important as we must learn the teachings of Islam from a personal point of view. What do I need to believe in? What is intellectually, what do I need to understand about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Day of Judgment and the stories of the people who came before us, and the angels and the books and the messengers, and how do I pray, how do I fast, how do I pay zakah, how do I perform hajj, all the arkan of Islam. I also must understand what my duty is towards my country, towards my society, and towards the entire ummah, and beyond that, of course, towards the world at large. We have to look around us. And we don't have to look in Palestine or Kashmir or Burma or Syria to see oppressed people. We see oppressed people here. It just somehow, it just because it's so, I don't know why we don't see it. I don't know why we have lived for now how many generations of Muslims, there's so many generations of course, indigenous Muslims, African American Muslims, but there are also, at least 3, in some places 4 generations of immigrant Muslims and converts, etc. And why are we not seeing this? Why are we not seeing the plight of the Native Americans? Why are we not seeing how they live in communities that get neglected and systematically destroyed with drugs, with alcohol, with tobacco, with gambling, with all kinds with diseases. They have, if you look at the epidemiology of diseases, there are diseases that are much higher incidence in the Native American communities in the United States than the entire population. Types of cancer and lung disease and heart disease and all. It's like, why is that happening in this superpower, in this richest country of the world? Why is it happening? We have to look into it, and we have to do something about it. Why don't we see that? Why haven't we? Until recently, until Black Lives Matter, and until the blatant shootings by the police that were televised, and with the social media, now we can see everything almost as it happens. Why haven't we seen the systematic oppression, and the failure of the system to address the needs and the necessities even for the African American community in this country? Why haven't we seen, and you may be surprised to see that, why haven't we been able to see the plight and the suffering of the working poor regardless of race? We have white people, black people, brown people, people of all ethnicities and races who cannot make ends meet, who are unable to live a decent life in this country, in the superpower of the world. You have homeless people of all races. You have people who are standing in lines, begging for help. Why, and I'm including myself, and I'm sorry for the negative tone of this, but why haven't we been able to see that? Is it because we've been living in our bubble, very happy? Most of us here in this audience, maybe a few exceptions, most of us seem to be from an immigrant background. Are we so happy that we left our countries where we were being oppressed and could be jailed and could disappear for expressing our opinion and so on and so forth, and we came here and we find here some advantages, some good life, we're able to make a better living for ourselves and our children, and that caused us to be, to be blinded, to be blind, whatever. We have blinders, we can't see around us. Why is that happening? Is it because we really don't see it, or because we don't want to see it? I think it's the latter, because now nobody has any excuse to say, well, I don't know that black people are suffering. I don't know that Native Americans are suffering. I don't know that there's such a thing as the poor white population. I don't know anything about what's happening in Tennessee and Mississippi, in Appalachian region. I don't know what's happening in West Virginia, where people cannot, feed their families. I don't know what is happening with, I'm asking black people to compete for a position, while I am, you compete for a position, but the finish line is the same, right? Is the position over there. But the start line is right here for a white male in particular, and all the way back there for an African American man or woman. Right? And you say, oh, this is a fair competition. You go compete. It's a free country. It's the land of opportunity. It is the land of opportunity for those who have the same start line. If an African American child is educated in very poorly equipped schools and healthcare system that actually causes more disease than take care of health, and a housing situation that is below human dignity, and you just name it. And then we say, oh, we're in the richest and most powerful, and we're in the best country in the world. Where do we get that from? As Muslims, I want, and it's not my style actually to try to do that, but I want every one of you, including myself, to leave with a tremendous sense of guilt. I don't like to guilt trip people. I don't like to remind ourselves of what we're not doing. But this, I'm trying a different approach. You have to feel guilty because you haven't done enough for your fellow human being before being, you know, fellow citizen or fellow American, your fellow human being who is suffering right in your backyard. How many communities, you know, how many you have, you know, from New Jersey, you have like Wayne, you know, very nice town, and people are happy, you know, maybe the household income in like 150K and so on and so forth. And then next door, almost next door, there's Patterson. You know, Patterson is the city that was featured in Morgan Freeman's film, you know, from like 20 years ago or so, which was Lean on Me. This is like choosing a worst example of a school. They chose Patterson. And next door there's Wayne. And next door there is, you know, other cities where people are, you know, living happily, completely oblivious, unaware of what's going on. As Muslims, that is not acceptable from us to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes al-fuqara wal-masakin so many times. How many times in the Quran do you read al-fuqara wal-masakin? The faqir and the miskin. And the scholars are trying to distinguish between the faqir and the miskin, and they have a difference of opinion. The one I like the most is al-faqir, who is someone who is unable to work and make money for whatever situation, is like that health situation, or completely have no access to, you know, to any training to be able to work and so on and so. That is faqir. And then the definition, and again I acknowledge there is a difference of opinion about the definitions. And then al-miskin is someone who works and cannot make enough money. Because in Surah Al-Kahf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَمَّا السَّفِينَةِ, talking about the ship that Al-Khidr alayhi salam, you know, drilled a hole in. أَمَّا السَّفِينَةُ فَكَانَتْ لِمَسَاكِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ فِي الْبَحْرِ. They were masakin, they're really poor, they need help, but they're working. So what we call the working poor. So when I say the miskin, I translate it into the working poor. The working poor is someone who is working, who has the skills, who is trying their best, and they are not able to make ends meet in the end. I can go on and on describing the plight of the communities, like the Native American community. You think of people who have suffered genocide a few generations ago and continued to be stopped from progressing and systematically. Don't ever justify to yourself saying that people are not successful because they are lazy, because they are na'udhu billah, because they're stupid, because they are whatever. No, it is because the system, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created humans equal. And in every population you have the most intelligent who is going to be doing the theoretical work and who equipped. Allah did not equip them with like the strength of the body as much as the strength of the mind, and they would do the theoretical work, and they do the designing and the learning and so on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in every community the people who are going to be the working class. Where do I get that? I get it from the Quran as well. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran, have to remind me of the beginning of the ayah, وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَكُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ دَرَجَاتٍ لِيَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا سُخْرِيًّا. The tafsir of this ayah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, humans or members of a community, has given you different skills, different skill sets, different types of skills, so that you will recruit and use the help of one another. Within every community there are people who are predisposed or could go and learn skills, sophisticated, skills and so on and so forth. And there are people who are going to be serving the need of the community by doing, what we call the blue collar work, or whatever the term is. And that does not say that the people who are smarter are better and the people who are doing the manual work are worse. No, because in the end, the woman, it's so actually, that when the Sahaba told us about this hadith, they were not even sure whether it's a man or a woman. It's like there was this shadow that comes and cleans the masjid, right? And then the riwayah says it's a woman, and another riwayah says, no, it was a man. It is so invisible to society, even at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And when she or he stopped showing up at the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ asked about her, where is she? And he was told she died, and he went at her grave and performed Salat al-Janazah at her grave. So that doesn't mean when we say there are, people who are able to do manual work only, people who are able to do, theoretical work only, or kind of like, the people who sit on the computer and keep writing code all day and whatever. This is not to say this is better, this is worse. This is saying this is how Allah created human beings, and within every community, these are variations of skill sets, and therefore I refuse whatever anthropological, studies or whatever, the colonials used to keep to try to even to convince us back in the 19th, starting the 18th and 19th century, that black people were inferior, Native Americans were inferior, Middle Easterns were inferior, Indians were inferior. We're doing them a favor. There's no such thing. Don't ever, scratch all this. This is all nonsense. So we have a duty to our country, we have a duty to our community, we have a duty, and we have to really, we have to dream big. We have a system that failed us, and in particular, failed the minorities, the underprivileged minorities as a whole. No matter what. Look at what has the Democratic Party done in the past 8 years it's been in power, or the past 8 years before, 1992 to 2000. What has it happened? What has it done for these people? We kept in just this talking to ourselves, convincing ourselves that we're successful and we're great, and we have a black president, and we have some token minorities in government and so on, and we feel so good about it and forget the real issue. There are people still, black, white, brown, Native American, whatever the ethnicity is, there's still people who are living under the poverty line and who are not making ends meet in this country. And we have to dream big. We have to think that it's our duty as Muslim Americans to contribute to fixing this corrupt, extreme capitalist system. Because that's what it is. It's extreme capitalism. We talk about extreme religious, ideologies and how dangerous they are and so on. Extreme capitalist ideology is also very, very dangerous. In extreme capitalist ideology, the state owes you nothing. You are on your own. Whatever they give you, they're doing you a favor. If you don't make enough money and you have to go and get food stamps and get some, welfare, they're just doing you a favor. They're giving it, and so and what they are serving, what this system is serving, corporations who have a big, percentage of the economy. Basically, they are not loyal to your country. They are not loyal to the country even where they exist. They are only loyal to their stakeholders and to the bottom line. And therefore, people like, these greedy businessmen like Mr. Trump and his companions, they basically are the reason why we have a great deal of the reason why we have poor white people, we have poor people of all races. Because, you know, the person who was working an assembly line job in Detroit or in Atlanta or wherever, and making decent money and having you know, insurance, and having, you know, his or her children going to a good school and receiving a good education, now they have nothing. Now they have to stand in line for unemployment. Then they have to stand in line and get food stamps. Now they have to apply for, you know, health care or whatever. Where's their dream has become a nightmare. And we wonder where all this hate coming from. And because someone who actually is the main reason for their suffering is telling them, no, it's not me, it's those immigrants. It's the Muslims who hate us. It's the Mexicans who are taking our jobs. It's the, you know, it's the gays and lesbians who are going to corrupt our country completely. And it's the people who are killing the babies. Can you imagine? We think of Egypt, we think of, you know, some other countries where someone climbs on the member and say, if you vote yes for this, you will be pleasing Allah, and if you vote no, you'll be displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we laugh at that. We say, you know, how ignorant can people be? We have people in the heartland of America that they're preachers and their talk show hosts on the radio telling them, if you vote for the Democratic Party, you're going to hell. That's it. That's that black and white. Why? Because they kill babies. Why? Because they are going to officiate, you know, gay marriage. Why? Because of this. Why? Because of that. And they just don't think. Even though the person who's on the other side is largely, and I'm not freeing the Democratic Party of blame, because they really messed things up as well. But I'm saying that people here also are so gullible and so naive and so credulous that they can be swayed from one side to the other by a preacher telling them, if you vote for this candidate, you're going to hell. And we have a duty. We have a duty as citizens. We have our duty as you know, people who are largely have more, you know, percentage-wise, people who more better education, more people with advanced degrees, etc. That we really have to start campaigning. We have to start working with like-minded people to just free the system from this gridlock and this you know, the stagnation that it has reached. We have to have economists who will challenge this extreme capitalist system and show it for what it is, expose it for what it is, that is actually, it's betraying the very country that has given you the opportunity and the platform to form this corporation and make billions of dollars. And then in the end, you don't pay taxes, and in the debate, in the presidential debate, you say, that makes me smart, because I don't pay taxes. That's the mentality of these people who are now coming to be ruling the country. However, in the end, you know, I'd like to read you a quote that I just read this morning from Dr. Cornel West. You know who he is, right? He's a great guy. Very, very well educated and very well spoken. He said, and then put it in your Islam, in your perspective as a Muslim as well, saying, as one, talking about himself, whose families survived and thrived through slavery, Jim Crow, and lynching, Trump's neo-fascist rhetoric and predictable authoritarian reign is just another ugly moment in our history. It's just another ugly moment that calls, now this is the important message, that calls forth the best in who we are in order to, the best of who we are and what we can do to fix this. So, and he's saying, let's not just say, oh, we're hopeful. Let's have hope. He's saying is too abstract. What do you mean I have hope? Maybe hope can be based on just being naive, right? But he says, let's not have hope. Let's be a hope. So let's be that hope that can actually safely, deliver this country from what is coming. And what is coming seems to be quite dark. A neo-fascism, no less than that. So we're moving from this neoliberalism, kind of la-la land, if you will, and singing our own praise, talking to ourselves, being happy about what we claim to have achieved and how great we are, while still drones are killing innocent people, Palestinians are still suffering, Kashmiris are still suffering, the Rohingya are still suffering. We're not delivering, we're not doing our job as the superpower of the world, or the country that should be raising the banner of freedom and justice, etc. And we've been doing that. Now we have I said before, unleashed this hatred that is coming out of these places, and now we can see the appointments now that people are going to be leading the government, etc., etc. Let's put in mind what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, that everything, this is Allah's plan. We hope for something else, but this is Allah's plan. قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is the ultimate ruler of this universe. He causes people, He enables people to be empowered, and He also takes the power away from others because of their actions. And we have to contemplate on this ayah so much and see what is happening. Why are the Democrats doing so miserably now? What have they done? What can we learn from their mistake or our mistake? What are the dangers now that we're facing? How can we proactively deal with them? And that is the way that inshallah we can safely, inshallah, and even make progress in the next 4 years بإذن الله تعالى. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me for saying anything that is wrong, that displeases Him, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for listening. وجزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Hesham.